Welcome to the Kayak Bass Connection podcast. This is the official podcast of the Southern Illinois Kayak Tournament Trail. I am your host, Jared. Man, we got a big episode tonight. I've got a great group of folks joining me, and tonight we're going to honor our 2024 Southern Kayak Club Angler of the Year, Mr. Dalton Williams. And there he is in the flesh. Dalton, thanks for joining us. I've asked some of Dalton's teammates from the 2024 Crossroads Championship to join us to, let's just say, go over his year in review, because most of the time those are the folks nipping at his heels during the tournaments and, of course, during the point chase. They can give us a little insight and maybe ask him some of those questions they've been wanting to ask him all year long now that we've got him on the hot seat. So let's start out. Just the introductions. I've got Dustin Seigle here with us tonight. Dustin, welcome. Susy Roloff, and then Darren Hemker, a very frequent guest to the show. I was looking at my guest list a while ago that I just keep it running total. He may be on the top of that list for the most appearances. Now, so Dalton, first of all, congratulations to the huge accomplishment for winning Angler of the Year this year.
Thank you.
Now,
it was a big struggle getting it.
Oh, I don't know. I was looking at your finishes for the entire year, and if you were struggling, the numbers didn't really show that. The numbers really showed somebody that was extremely consistent. So let me just run through these real quick, okay? So we started out the year at first tournament in April at Newton Lake. You were second. Second tournament at Sankers, you were third. Cedar Lake, which you won last year, second. Little Grassy was our fourth tournament of the year, and you finished fourth. And then Banner Marsh for tournament number 5, you won that tournament. And then let's see, what's your average finished? It's obviously in the top 5, right? So if you struggled this year, I would love to have a struggling year.
Yeah, I only got one first out of that. Unlike Susie, she got 2. So
yes, yeah, she did great as well. So you said you struggled, which is interesting. What kind of struggles did you face that maybe you obviously overcome those struggles, right? To have some great finishes.
Since I got the new pedal drive last year, I had Dustin Kessler telling me that I'm fishing a lot faster than I normally do, since I have the pedal drive now. So this year I kind of slowed down my tactics and all that and tried going back to what happened 2 years ago when I first joined.
Okay. Yeah, because you just started kayak fishing. I saw in your notes that you started in 2021, and your first tournament season was just in 2022, right?
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, I think I remember seeing you unloading your kayak. You did a lot of work with just a paddle in your hand for the first year or two, right?
Yep. Just the first year. Then after the first year, then I'm like, this is something I want to do competitively and get a better kayak.
All right. Awesome. So after that year, what kayak did you upgrade to then?
I had the Sen 10T. Then I upgraded to a Vive Shearwater 125, 12'6".
Okay.
I mean, it's an average kayak, unlike Dustin's Hobie, Darren's Native, and Susie's Hobie. But yeah, Darren called my kayak cheap when I was dropping him off.
I guess the job done, right? Excuse me, who's got the Angler of the Year title this year?
Yeah,
it's just a platform. It's whatever.
That man,
just
Dustin,
another
you're
tool.
so right.
Yeah.
So you said you realized you were fishing too fast.
Mm-hmm.
So did you change the baits that you primarily relied upon, or did you just take your time? You just slow down?
I just slowed down. I felt at the very end of last year, like I said, Dustin and Kessler told me that I was fishing way too fast. So this year I kind of made myself slow down, stick with the same lures, but make multiple casts in the same spot, then move and all that.
So any idea what was your record for the most cast, like, and then catch a fish? So if you have a piece of structure you're casting to or casting to, talking 2, 3, 10, 15?
It depends on the lake, really. So if it's a shallow bite, I throw probably 2 or 3 casts in the same area, then I move.
Mm.
But if it's like cedar, I continuously cast in one area for like 10 to 15. Then I'll go to my next spot. Then I'll throw 10 to 15. Basically, that I caught fish there in the past, I go back to those spots and re-hit those that I know that I've caught fish there in the past.
Does that turned out to be pretty productive? Obviously, you had a successful year, so.
Yeah, well, I didn't win cedar this year since Susy went on her hot streak.
Yeah, that was incredible. You know, we talked about that in a previous episode, and I still can't believe it when you see those numbers. Susie's smiling just thinking about it.
Yeah, I still can't believe it.
It's definitely, I think, my favorite video I've seen this year, fishing videos. So,
I get a little animated.
yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And
By
Dalton,
little, I mean a lot.
and Dalton, that's one thing about you. I've never seen you get too excited or frustrated, even on the water.
Well, you never really seen me on the water frustrated.
You didn't see him trying to go through grass.
Oh.
Up on Fletcher's Pond.
Oh.
You didn't see him
Yeah,
trying to smallmouth fish next to me whenever I was live scoping. That was frustration right there.
You know, I used to
I was
always
just
joke.
casting in the middle of nowhere.
You know, when we're at tournaments, like Darren will call me usually a couple times a day and be like, "Are you catching any fish?" And I'll be like, "No." And he's like, "I got 95," and I'm like, "Ah, screw you." And you know, I never hear from Dalton unless he's doing bad, and I can tell you he gets frustrated out there because when he's doing bad, I'll get like messages from him like, "Are you getting any fish at all?" But then if I don't hear from him all day, he's usually doing really good. And this whole year, I like never heard from him ever, and I'm like, God, Dalton must be killing it this year because I never messaged me once. But,
Yeah, then you butt in Banner with me.
yeah.
Man, I feel left out now. Except for Crossroads, then I got to hear from everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Darren always calls me right when I'm catching a fish, and then I always lose it, and I blame him. So it's worse.
It's timing.
Yeah, it's timing.
Yeah, like Susy losing the 2 fish on my spot right at the boat.
Oh. Is that during Crossroads tournament?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Probably wouldn't have helped.
Maybe. They were only 15s. I keep telling myself they were only 15s.
Yeah.
We're
yeah,
small.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we had to tell Corey too. But his rod was really bent over pretty bad.
That was a big one.
Pretty sure that was a big fish.
18 plus at least.
Oh. Oh.
So,
And we're only losing the tournament by like a couple inches. I mean, it wasn't much, was it?
yeah, and at that
3
point he didn't have.
It was like 3 some odd inches.
Man.
Yeah, it was.
At that point, he didn't have a fish yet either, so we were just like, "Yeah, it was probably small. Don't worry about it."
I saw the flash and it was easily an 18 plus. Easily. And he didn't do anything wrong. He kept tension on it and it just popped loose. Nothing he could have done different.
Well, that's a good. I like that you brought that up, Darren. So, Dalton, during this year, you've had these great finishes all year long. What kind of frustrations have you had, and more importantly, how did you recover from those?
In the mornings, I've noticed by how I fish, I usually don't get a keeper until midday. That's what I've noticed. So I'm trying to think what tournament it was. What was the last tournament? Caffeine?
Coffee was the last. Yeah.
Yeah. I got my 5 fish in like the first hour. I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting top 5 this tournament. Because I never get 5 fish in the first hour. But
So why do you think that is that you're not hitting your keepers until mid morning or early afternoon?
honestly, I wish I knew. Because I would love to know myself.
Yeah. Yeah. But that has to bring you some confidence, right? Because you've overcome that in the past.
Yeah, I think I still fish fast in the morning since it's a tournament and I kind of want to cover more water in the morning. Then I realized like whatever my tactic is, it's not working. So I just need to go more like a finesse way to catch fish.
So would you still classify yourself as a power fisherman, or are you leaning more towards just finesse techniques?
It depends on the lake, honestly.
Okay.
Like Newton, I'm a power fisher. St. Chris, I'm finesse. Cedar, I'm finesse. Coffeen, I'm a little bit of both, but mostly power fishing. But
now, what's your decision making process there versus, you going to tie on a chatterbait or are you going to tie on a Cinco? I mean, what's your decision making process? You say different lakes you respond to differently. Why?
if there's no grass at all, I usually throw a chatterbait, or not chatterbait, crankbait. So like Newton, I'll throw a crankbait. Then if they stop hitting the crankbait, then I'll switch it up to like a Cinco or a jig.
Okay. What about the rest of you on the podcast tonight? Is that sort of what you try to do?
Always start with the top water. No matter what it is, it's always start with the top water. Frog or buzzbait or whopper plopper, depends on what you're fishing, but obviously start with the top water. If that doesn't work, switch it up quick if you're not getting bit. Most of the time in the morning, if you're not getting bit on a top water, then you better switch quick because your bite window's closing fast.
Yeah, I've always just been throwing the same jigs and pitching baits in the morning just to try to get a 5-fish limit. And this year I tried to switch it up to trying to do some of the moving baits like Darren to try to put bigger fish up in the morning, and it failed pretty miserably. So I'm probably not going to do that again, but or just get better at it. Who knows? Whatever.
What about you,
For me,
Susie?
it just kind of depends on, location, pre-fishing patterns, kind of what's going on in the morning. Especially like, my home waters or even Newton, I'm watching like, are there fish popping? Is there like bait being chased around, then I'll usually go for top water in a sense. And then if they're not hitting that at all, then I'll go to moving bait. So, chatterbait, Texas rig type of thing.
Awesome. Okay. Hey, Dalton. So, as Angler of the Year, is there any one bait that you think, man, I could not have won this without my persistent use of this one bait during these circumstances? I'm asking
Honestly,
a lot there.
Me and my dad, we talk pretty frequent on the water and all that. He'll call me at work and he's like, "Are you catching anything?" I'm like, usually I say no in the mornings, and he can tell that I'm frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
But me and him was talking, and it's been different baits in every tournament that I've gotten top 3. So Newton was a crankbait, which is rare to hear. St. Chris was Cinco. Cedar was a jig, or no, that was a frog. Coffeen, I just threw chatterbait. That I can't think of the other lakes, but
Banner, you caught a big one on a frog early, didn't you?
Yeah, Banner. I did frog and jig. So all my tournaments have been different in some ways, and if they are like somewhat same, I'm usually throwing 2 different lures. That's helped me get the top 3 or 5.
So, would you say versatility is key there? I mean, you can't just lock 2 in your hands and go for it.
Yeah, I usually have like 4 baits I usually throw, and if those 4 ain't working, I might as well pack up and just go home. Because I'm not throwing a buzz bait.
That's a good bait right there. That's a sleeper.
Oh man!
Or that knuckleball bait, whatever Darren has on his rod right now.
I'm going to catch a fish on that bait.
No, you're not.
Did you bring it with you, Darren?
It's upstairs. I can go grab it. You want me to go grab it?
Sounds like you need to go grab it.
I'll grab
I want
that.
to see that thing. Yeah. I want to see it.
So we were all, what night was that? Was that was Saturday night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We were all sitting there, and I was like, oh yeah, I brought my 2 big boxes of my collection of spinner baits that I've just amassed over the 10 years that I've been kayak fishing, because I'm not really like somebody who throws a lot of stuff away, but then sometimes I just forget about it. But I had these 2 big containers of spinner baits, and we're, going through them or whatever, and I pull out these 2, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about these, and I forgot what they were even called. So they're called like a knuckle bait.
I'm not even gonna lie. Whenever I saw the commercial for these, I was going to buy a bunch of them because I just thought it was cool. And she pulled it out of that box, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to catch a fish on that." So it's a Yozuri knuckleball, I think is what the actual name is.
Okay.
So it's basically like a spinnerbait. It's got the body like a spinnerbait, but it's got this like resin ball with
it's a
all
Christmas
these
tree bulb. What the heck?
Yeah.
They don't work. There's no way that catches fish.
When you throw it through the water, the most of your action comes from the tail of your swim bait. Hardly anything happens here. It moves, and you can't hardly feel.
It's 100% a gimmick. It's just a gimmick.
Yep.
I'm going to catch a fish on that bait before the end of the year, but I'll catch one on that.
But if you're bored at a tournament, you have to look through Susy's spinnerbait box, because there are a ton of gimmick spinnerbaits in there with like 5 spinners on them. Like, what is it?
It's basically after I hit.
Almost like mini Alabama rigs in a sense, only it just was on like 5 arms,
The craziest baits I've ever seen. I've never seen spinner baits with like instead of just having one arm sticking off here on that part, it has 2 arms sticking off just like that. It's like, what is going on here? And it's got 4 willow leaf blades. It's like, what are you? Who thought of this?
Yeah, I mean, it is an Alabama rig, right? Just, jeez.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Somebody must like them, because I just looked on Tackle Warehouse. They're $9.99 a piece.
Jesus.
So. Oh, they still make them?
Yeah.
The knuckle baits?
Yeah. Missouri knuckle bait. $9.99. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy those. I would not buy
Carl's
them.
has got them for $9.99.
Darren, I hope you win on that lure. I just want to see it. Just get top 3. That'd be plenty. Just like on people's faces when they hear it.
Oh my god!
You'd be a legend, right?
I'm going to win. I'm going to win a tournament on that bait. That's my goal.
I would like to see someone win a tournament on a spinnerbait in general, just for fun, because I don't believe anyone ever has. But those
early
Michigan
in the
guys
spring,
love
man. It can happen.
Those Michigan guys
Garbage.
love them. Every time we talk to them, they're, hey, that spinnerbait, man. Hey, that's a good bait, man. Like, no.
Hey there, guy.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about those Michigan guys a little bit. So kind of transition to talking about the tournament that you just finished, the big tournament that everybody looks to compete in by getting one of those top 5 slots. That is a Crossroads Kayak Championship. So this year, you had just finished that just this last weekend. So September 28th and 29th. So this year it was held at Fletcher's Pond, Michigan, right? I looked it up. It was 9,000 acres. Pretty good body of water.
It's a lake.
Yeah. It's funny how it's called a pond, right?
It's huge.
You can't get any farther northeastern in Michigan and still be in Michigan. So we had a few folks from our top 5 that couldn't make the trip or couldn't get up there, but you guys were the majority of the team up there. I think the only person we're missing from your team was Corey Forsyth, which he may join us here in a moment. You guys had an incredible showing. Had any of you even seen that lake before?
Nope.
No.
No.
It's the stupidest lake ever. What they told us is that it's literally 4 to 6 feet deep for 9,000 acres. The entire thing is grass and stumps. And
the wildest lake ever.
They told us that they flooded that lake. It didn't cut any of the trees down, waited for it to freeze, and then cut the trees down when it was iced, and then they sunk. And so it's just stumps everywhere.
Wow.
And you'll find trees that have three propeller blades stuck in them. Because and you'll be fishing and you'll hear a clunk and you look over and then somebody's getting their boat towed because they just bumped into a stump.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty brutal place to fish.
Yeah.
The worst
probably
grass
not a lot of recreational
ever.
boating there, huh?
No.
0. The worst grass ever. The grass was like paracord.
Yeah, at one
Really?
point we were trying to get upgrades on the first day, and we couldn't even get across the lake. The grass was so bad, so we just gave up and went back to our starting spot.
Wow.
I didn't have a problem at all.
It's pretty well.
How many fish did you catch again?
300
How many big fish?
motor on it.
She's
I caught a rockfish, all right.
How
she's
many
got a
big ones?
blender on the back of her
And
kayak.
whose spot?
Yeah.
An A spot.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you guys, even though you've never seen the lake before, and it's probably something you just didn't anticipate at all. Hey, you walked around. Talk to us about the first day. The first day, you guys walked out of there in the lead.
So
Not by
Dalton and I
much.
got there early. So Dalton and I got there on like Tuesday. We smallmouth fished in different lakes for 2 days, and then on Thursday we went to Fletcher's Pond. So we got there, looked at the lake. We were like, "This is going to be an interesting one," and we started going around the lake. Dalton, within 5 minutes, says he already caught like a 15, and then he missed another one, something like that on a chatterbait. So I get to where I had found the spot on the map I liked, got there, made 3 casts, and my third cast I caught a 20 3/4 inch largemouth.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, I got an idea here, and then me and him went down that same spot, and I caught 2 more 17s, 3 more 17s. I had like 90 1/4 inches on the first day practice. It's like, yep, that'll work. So then day 2 practice,
Wow.
which is Friday. Susy was there for Friday, so we had a game plan going into it. So we went into it trying to execute our game plan. I tried a couple different things, didn't catch a single fish for the first couple hours. Went to my other spots I chose on the map, which are just hard spots, is all they were. Got to them. As soon as I got there, I caught 2 fish back to back, and I was like, okay. I crossed the lake, did 3.5 miles, get to a spot.
Oh,
First
my gosh.
cast there, I catch a 20. Go down the bank a little bit, catch another 19. Susie comes up, she catches a 16. I catch another 16. So we're happy as can be going into the day 1 tournament. So then day 1 tournament comes around, and I go up to our starting spot, me, Corey, and Dustin. I put up, 80 inches in like the first 25, 30 minutes right away. And I was doing really good, but Corey and Dustin weren't doing as good. Dustin could see because he had live scope, so he could see where the grass holes were and stuff. So he was catching a few fish doing that. He caught his limit. And Corey, never seeing this fishery, never being to a fishery like this before, he didn't know what he was doing yet. So after 2 or 3 hours of that, he finally kind of caught on to what we were doing, but it was past the bite window by then. So he wasn't really getting bit, so we just let him go try to do what he always does and catch fish. He came back I called him and told him to come back as the fish were starting to light up again. He caught, I think, one right next to us, and then I caught a random chatterbait fish, totally random, had no rhyme or reason to it. And I was like, okay, come on, Corey, we're going to go down this hard line here. It was a railroad track bed. I said, we're just going to throw chatterbaits down it. And within 25 minutes, we caught like 17 keepers.
Oh,
it was just on fire like I've never seen before. So I'm calling up the whole squad. I'm calling everybody. I was like, get over here. Get over here. They get over here. We caught like 2 more fish. It just died. You had like 25 minutes to catch fish, and that was it.
It is a weird fishery because it's 4 to 6 feet deep and the whole thing's grass. You're literally fishing 300 yards in the middle of the lake.
And it's still 4 feet deep.
Yeah, unless you're comfortable fishing on submerged shit that isn't near the bank, it's pretty tough. And that first day, it was like, what the hell are we doing? And then it took a minute to kind of get an idea of what we were doing. And then the fish came pretty easy. After that, and second day, they were pretty easy. But that first day was pretty rough right off the bat. And I know Corey didn't seem like he had a lot of experience fishing offshore, so he was struggling a little bit. But it was definitely a learning experience. And the weird thing too is like different things would happen at that lake at different times. Like at one time, Susie and Dalton are calling me and they're saying, "Oh, dude, just pitch right next to these broadleaf plants and just let your jig sit and they'll bite." And so I'm doing that and I'm not catching anything. And Darren's like, don't come to us. Just start where you're at. You're wasting time if you don't. Not catching a fish. And then I moved over to where they do because I didn't catch one fish, made one cast, and I caught like 2 fish immediately. And I'm like, dude, this isn't happening on the other end of the lake. It's just happening here. So you really had to move to that bite, and it was pretty tough. And then you got bit off by pike a lot, which sucked ass. So that sucked.
Oh.
Yeah.
I never did.
Yeah, I lost a few lures to pike. That was disappointing. But
yeah, it's a real kick in the nuts when they do that.
Yeah, and I know you like you fish with jackhammers, the expensive chatterbaits,
Evos. But yeah,
I lost $30 in Evos. That's for sure.
Oh man,
well,
it sucks because you'll just be reeling, and all of a sudden you feel the bite, and you're like, okay, that's a fish, and you go to hook set, and it's just gone. It's just straight to slack. You don't feel any tension at all. It's just gone like that.
Gone.
Dude, I'm telling you, I had a big 35-incher all the way to the boat, and I was pumped. I was going to send the picture to everybody, and right when I grabbed my net, it just snapped right off, and I'm like, you got to shit me, man. God.
Man.
I didn't have very much confidence going into day one just because pre-fishing, somebody was pissing me off by catching all the fish like right in front of me. So I'm like, all right,
19,
whatever.
A 20 and another 20 right next to you.
Blonde poofy hair.
Hey, you can't get mad at him at the 20. That was your fault.
Well,
yeah, I 100% told you to fish this hard spot before you go to the dock. What does she do? Blows right over the hard spot straight to the dock. I get up there, first cast on it, I catch a 20.5-incher right where I told her to cast.
Anyway.
I mean, perfect. You couldn't have rode it up any better.
Yeah,
It's just my luck, like wouldn't have fit for me no matter what I would have done. So I was like, whatever. He's just gonna catch that fish anyway, so I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah.
She was like being quiet and being like mad, and she's just like, you can hear her like puffing and puffing off to the side because she wasn't catching fish, and I was. It was great.
It's a good thing we let her calm down for a couple of days, right?
And I will say that first day of that tournament, we were in first place after day one, but we fished so conservatively because we were so concerned about everybody getting limits. Like Darren got a limit, and then I'm like, okay, I got to get a limit. But Darren's literally catching fish right next to me, and for some reason on the same exact jig, I'm not catching fish. I had to literally yell at him, stop casting so I can catch fish.
I basically spent 3 hours without fishing because we were trying to get them limits.
But the second Darren quit casting, I got a limit in 20 minutes, and it was like, okay, I'm done. But then we waited for Corey, and it was like, all right, let's wait for Corey. Dalton was doing the same thing with Susy.
Yeah.
And so we were real conservative waiting on people to get limits. And that was probably a mistake because everybody ended up everybody ended up getting limits. And so that was probably a mistake to shut people off. It was just kind of no rhyme or reason when that bite picked up on those hard spots. And then the second day, we just all split up and said, hammer your spots and get as big as you can. And it was way better, but we should have done that day one. But I think a lot of other teams did the same thing. Like talking to that Michigan team that won, they didn't have a guy get a limit till 2 minutes before lines out on the first day. So they were doing the same thing, struggling, just trying to get people limits. But second day, they went all out too, just like we did. And
day two was insane. The fish were biting so good on day two.
It was fun.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I think I caught more smallmouth than anybody else on that lake.
Huh.
Yeah.
And you're welcome.
Smallmouth. Yeah.
All off Dalton's spot.
Yeah.
And the thing that was the most surprising about that tournament is our technique and pattern we were running was pretty unique. And we were kind of like, there's no way anyone else figured this out. And then we would look at the standings and be like, oh, shit, everyone else figured something out, too.
Yeah.
And then when we got back to the ramp at the end, after they announced the winners, we started asking the other teams. They were doing something completely different than us. They were just throwing chatterbaits.
Random chatterbait fishing, basically.
And we were jigging the railroad track and other hard spots, and all they were doing is throwing chatterbaits by a dam. And we're like, that sounds so much easier than what we were doing.
Ours was so specific. If you cast it 3 feet off the railroad tracks, you wouldn't catch a thing. But you cast on the railroad tracks, they were just hammering it. And I called Dustin on day two, like 45 minutes into the tournament, if that. I had my limit in 15 minutes on day two. I crushed those fish right away. And I
15
called
minutes.
Dustin. I was like, dude, are you catching them? He's like, I've got one. And I was like, as soon as the jig hits the bottom, just shake your rod. Don't jig it anymore. Just shake it. And he's on the phone with me. He's like, okay. And as soon as he shakes it, he catches what? Like a 17-incher instantly.
Oh, it was
He's
an
like,
18 3/4. I mean, literally,
It was just-
I got a limit on the phone with Darren when he
And
told
then
me that.
I thought-
Right when he said, don't, because the first day we were popping jigs and we were catching fish.
Mhm.
Second day, I'm like, man, I'm just not getting a whole lot popping them. And I was thinking about changing colors because I was getting short strikes. And Darren's like, just let it sit and just jiggle it. And I caught 5 fish like within 10 minutes on the phone.
And I'm on the phone with Dustin, and I made a cast way long up this hard spot. It's just basically a railroad track that flooded. They took all the track off and just left the rock there. So I bomb cast down this I'm on the phone with Dustin. I'm just jigging the thing, and I'm like, oh, there's a bite. I lean into it, and I tell him on the phone, I was like, if this is not a pike, this is a giant bass, and it just dove straight into the grass. And I fought it out. He catches another one while on the phone with me. And then I finally reach down, instead of netting it like, smart people do, I just reach down and grab it. Yeah, 21-incher. I just reached down and lip out of the grass.
Oh, yeah, that was the big bass of the entire event, right?
Oh, yeah, by a half-inch too yet.
Yeah.
I caught four 20-inch fish and 2 19-inch fish in 4 days out of that lake.
Wow.
We had one other 20-inch fish caught by Dalton. Other than that, it was just I got something about the way I was jigging was different, and they were just loving it.
Yeah. Because we were all
And it was
throwing the same
infuriating
jig.
because, when you go and fish right next to him, you're doing the same damn exact thing, and he's just catching them like it's nothing. And I'm just like, I hate you.
I'm telling
I hate
you.
you.
I'm telling you, it's that hair. It's the poofy hair, man.
It made no sense.
I still think he has a top secret jig scent or something he dips them in that we don't have. Because
if I find out what that secret is, I'll tell you.
I started
started
coating my jigs with ProCure, thinking maybe this is going to be the advantage. No, it wasn't. But
What kind of hair treatments do you use? Just curious.
Maybe that's
whatever.
Shampoo.
No,
he was the jig barber.
He's got a whole 10 bottles of things he puts in the bathroom at the Airbnb.
I'm telling you.
It's a 30-minute
Those
process.
are not mine. Those are Susy's. Those are mine. I just have 2. 1 shampoo, 1 conditioner. That's it.
So, Dalton, you're
Gotta
always
get
the
the
voice
sun.
of reason here. So, what actually is he doing?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
Speechless.
Yeah. It's just like the smallmouth fishing. I don't understand it.
That was so funny. We were live scoping the smallmouth in 28 feet of water in dark, like 9:30, I think, at night. It's dark. And I was live scoping, and I was like, okay, there's a mark. I'm throw it, and I tell him just cast where I cast. So he's casting like on the same spot. I'm watching both of our drop shots sink next to the fish, and I'd catch the fish, and he wouldn't every single time. I caught 2 4-pounders, like 10 or 15 fish in between 15 and 13 inches. It was just over and over and over. And finally, the last day, he got bit over me one time, and it was a 4-pounder too. So he was pretty happy with his little 4-pounder he caught.
That was a little awkward.
Secret bait. It's the secret bait juice, man. I'm telling you, he's got secret bait juice.
I think he just have a lucky horseshoe under his ass.
I would share it if I had one.
No, you know what it is?
That I can come to, because I've seen the way he fishes, I've seen the way he does things, and I'm just like, there's no explanation for it.
I think I know what it is. It's that dang honey bun that he has in his kayak.
That could be. I threw it away though, so we'll see. I have a honey bun that was
that's
definitely in my kayak for multiple months. Multiple months. But it came with me every day.
Flowing out behind the kayak.
Hey, as long as I catch fish, I don't care what the secret technique is.
Yeah, you obviously had that figured out. You finished third, as I recall, overall.
Third overall. I had the biggest fish. Yep.
Yeah, third overall. Took biggest fish. Total of 179.25 for 2 days.
And 3
Pretty
days
impressive.
without fishing, or 3 hours without fishing.
Trying to let everybody else get their fish.
I'm kicking myself for not keep fishing. All I needed was, if I would have caught one more 20, we would have won. That's all I needed was a 20-inch fish.
Part of that 3 hours was us trying to get across the lake to another spot, and that in not being successful. Because every 5 minutes, Darren had to clean his propeller out.
Yeah.
I
So it was,
seriously cleaned my
eventually
prop
it's like,
45 times.
we can't do this.
Wow.
Well, you know, like I started off in one spot on day one. I was like on the southern part of the lake, you know, and I can't remember. I think it was Darren that called me. He's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've only got one. This spot isn't working out for me." So he's like, "All right, well, go to Dalton." You know, I was like, "All right." So I'm looking on the map. I'm like, Jesus. Took me what, like 40 minutes to get there, but it was like almost 3 miles.
Straight into a headwind.
And I'm sitting there on the spot.
Boat.
I'm sitting there on the spot, casting around my hole. Can't fish the hole because Susy's coming, so I'm sitting there for an hour and a half. Here she comes, first cast, catches a fish. I'm like, yep. Loses the second one, loses the third one. Then she finally got her limit. Then I left. Yeah, I texted her later on. I'm like, hey, how many fish did you end up catching there? She's like, oh, 20-something. I'm like,
Wow.
It just, the smallmouth were just on fire. Like, it was insane.
How big were the smallmouth?
I think I got the biggest smallmouth, 17 1/4 inches. So,
pretty good.
Yeah, like my biggest was only like 16-ish. That was it. But I had like lots of 14s and 15s.
Those smallmouth were doing something wild. They would like school up, right? So you'd be reeling in your one smallmouth, and there'd be 4 other ones right with it, trying to take the jig out of its mouth. So the 19-incher I caught on day one, there was 2 fish with it, the largemouth. Had 2 largemouth with it that were bigger than it, trying to eat the jig out of the corner of its mouth. Like
the smallmouth, it was really annoying because you'd catch one and you'd be reeling it in and you'd see all the other ones following it, and so you'd get that fish in and you'd need to measure it so you could get that lure back in the water because the school was there. But the damn fish at that lake would not shut their mouths. I don't know how.
Wow.
They really made it known that you couldn't have your hand underneath their gill plate. And I was thinking, well, that's not a big deal. I never put my hand under the gill plate. That was the first tournament where I'm thinking, I want to stick my hand under the gill plate of this fish and shut its mouth, because they would not shut their mouths. And you'd be sitting there struggling with them for 5 minutes. Like, shut your mouth, dude.
Their mouth would lock open, their dorsal fin would lock up, and they just freeze up and just sit there. And there's nothing you can do with them. You're just waiting.
You'd be trying to jam them closed, and they would not. You couldn't do it. It was awful. And you'd just be watching. I'd be staring at all the fish swimming under me, trying to get that damn fish measured. It was awful.
That's the other thing, is it was clear. Like, certain parts of the lake was crystal clear. You could see the whole bottom everywhere. But then other parts of the lake you'd go to were a little more like tea colored, I guess you'd call it. So where we were fishing on that hard spot was all like tea colored. But then where Dalton, I think, was fishing was much more clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was wild.
Nah.
It's a cool place.
So you just finished tournament season where when you go out, when you leave the dock, you're pretty much fishing by yourself without probably a whole lot of input on what's happening in other parts of the lake. How's that dynamic working with a team different from the rest of the season?
It's the best experience about Crossroads is to hear what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
Because like Darren will call me during the day when I'm fishing and see how I'm doing, but he won't tell me what he's doing. He'll be like, "You catching them?" And I'll be like, "No." And he'll be like, "I got 95." And I'll be like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Just anything." And I'm like, "Yeah, shut up." But at Crossroads, if you call them and they say, you catching fish? And you're like, "No." And they're like, "Do this specifically." And you're like, "Okay." And you catch fish. It's really, it's a really good learning experience to see how other people are fishing and how they do it. That's why I like going to Crossroads and why I ultimately went, because it's a fun learning experience where you get to actually see what other people are doing the whole time. But
of all the Crossroads we fished, I felt like this one we were way more tightly knit than any Crossroads I've ever been to. I mean, it was all day long. I was calling people were calling me. We were just trying to make sure everybody was on the fish as long as they possibly could.
Yep.
And like at one point, Dalton and Susie, they were still catching fish off that. We called it the twins. It was just 2 hard spots. They were still catching fish there, but the fish weren't helping. They're all 14, 15, 16 inches. And we needed 17s and 18s to win. So we were basically like come down here and hope for a big one. Because where we weren't catching as many big fish, but the ones we were catching, whenever they would be big, they'd be 17 to 20 inches.
Tournament winners, yeah.
And that worked out for me on day 2 because, I got my limit fairly quickly. And then I ran over to you guys. It took me, 40 minutes to go 2.5 miles again. And, it took a while, but then I caught that 19. I was like, all right, I felt like we were back in it.
She caught a 19, and the very next flip into that grass, she caught another 17. So she caught one.
Yeah.
I went over to her, and I was like, I'm not going to flip in that grass. She needs the cold fish. I don't. So I flip off to the side. She flips right into there, catches a 17 instantly. I was like, yes.
Yeah. And that was the time. And that's the time Darren called me and said, "Just flip the broadleaf tree grass and don't come here. Just start right now." And I wish I would have just beelined it right to there.
Well,
because
looking back at it now, but
I got there right at the tail end of that bite. But right when I got there, I was like, "What are you guys doing?" Because I'm doing what you're telling me, and I'm not catching fish. And then I did what they were telling me to do right where they were at, 17.5-inch upgrade right there. And I'm like, "Oh man." Wish I would have got here sooner.
Doing something different than what Darren was doing because, he would kind of swim his, and the way that I caught mine is I would flip it in there and I would let it go down to the bottom, and then I'd let it sit for a minute, and then I'd kind of give it a little jiggle, and then boom.
Those fish could not stand that jig jiggling in front of their face.
No.
If so on live scope, I was watching them on the second morning. I'd watch them come over to my jig and sit there and look at it. That's how I figured out the jiggle. Wow. As soon as I jiggled it, whack, they would just thump it.
And I don't know
great
if it's
big
because,
one. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know if it's because they're worried about pike. I don't know, because there's a big predator in that lake. But when those fish grabbed a jig, they were just moving. I mean, you'd just be sitting there, and you with finesse baits like a Senko and stuff. Sometimes you see your line move real slowly, and you're like, oh, I got a fish. You'd cast that jig in there and do that stupid jiggling thing like Darren would tell you, and you'd see your line just go right across. And you're like, holy shit. I mean, they really grabbed that thing and went.
But it's like Darren saw the pike, he saw me reeling it in like it was nothing, but them pike, they were just shoo, shoo.
It was, especially day 2. The pike were aggressive on day 2. I threw out the one time, actually, right where I caught the 21-incher, 25, 30 minutes later. I threw out there and I threw it, and it was on the fall. I look up and my line's just flying to the side. So I reel down as fast as I can and swing on it. As soon as I hooked it, I was like, oh boy, if that's not a pike, that's a big old bass again. Comes up and it's a pike bigger than my board. I hooked him right in the very tip of his nose.
Thank goodness.
I say, I was like, yeah, I hope that's a pike, and it was.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got a bite where it was like they hit it and then just sat there.
Mm-hmm.
Which you get, when you're fishing jigs in Illinois all the time, you throw that jig in there and you'll get a whap, and then the fish is just sitting there, and you set the hook and you pull it up. Every one of those was just, it's like they were moving into it and going real quick.
The only one that sat there after it bit was the first 20-incher I caught. I was live scoping and just so happened to look over. I was like, that kind of looks like a fish. So I was watching the jig sink in front of it, and I just jiggle it, and I feel boom, and it just sat there and never moved at all. And I swung on it 20 3/4. That was kind of cool.
Jeez.
Kind of cool for my first fish on practice. I mean, it makes the whole trip a whole lot more fun.
I'd say they picked a good lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that I went into that thinking that the max, that we were basically going to be fishing 17s and 18s, and there wasn't going to be a whole lot of big fish because it was northern Michigan. And then when we got done on that day 2, and you saw the number of people with 90 inches thrown up, you're like, holy cow. I mean,
there's
what,
like 7
or 8? Yeah.
No,
7 or 8. 20-inch fish on day 2.
Those individual standings are inflated a ton because everybody's working together. I mean, if people weren't working together, there would have been people that didn't get limits both days.
Yeah.
So,
but there would also have been people at 95 inches instead of 90.
Correct. I mean, if Darren never cut off day 1, he could have been at 95. But I will say that there are a lot more bigger largemouth in there than I thought there would be. I mean, I was like fishing Illinois. I mean, they were monster largemouth. I mean, it was fun.
Darren, you gotta tell the story about the long casting.
Oh boy.
What do you?
Oh boy.
What?
So next year we are going to be introducing a new event.
No,
I don't know if we're going to do this at the first tournament.
Let me precursor this. Okay, when you're with Dalton and Darren, these two young guys in their early 20s that have super high testosterone, every single goddamn thing is a competition. We get back to the the Airbnb, and they're like, let's see who can pitch the best, and they set up a cornhole board that's sitting on the side of a garage, and then they get bored with that because they don't want to beat up their lures. They're like, let's see who can cast the longest. Every single thing's a competition, and I'm like, I'm not doing this shit.
So he says, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. And so Dalton and I didn't ask him anymore. We go to cast at this log that's roughly 30 yards away. So a pretty far cast. That's a pretty long cast. 90 feet is pretty far. So we both had, I think, 1/2-ounce jigs on, and this log stump is just sticking up, and it's maybe this big. It's a pretty small stump. About, I don't know, that's all. So our goal was to get as close to that stump as we could. So I go to cast, and I land about 3 feet away from it. Really good cast. Dalton comes up and casts. He's about 6 or 8 feet away. Pretty nice cast, though. So Dustin's like, all right, I'll try it. So we're like, okay, here we go. So Dustin comes up. And I'm about 20 feet away, and I told Dustin, I was like, man, you're going to blow your reel up, because he's playing with his brakes and making sure everything's tuned perfectly. And I'm like, you're going to blow it up. You're going to blow up the reel. He didn't tie a different jig on either. He was just using the jig that we were using for the tournament. I was like, you're going to blow it up. So he says, all right. He's playing with him. He said, all right, here we go. And he goes to cast, and I was like, should I video this in case he blows it up? And I was like, I thought nothing will happen here. He goes to cast, and I'm watching it cast, and he goes, shh. And you watch it, right? And I'm watching his bait, and I'm like, damn, that's a really nice cast. And then I look over at him, and his braid is piled up at his feet because it broke about 15 yards out. And that jig was so far. I mean,
I won. I launched that jig farther than anybody. I mean, I won.
So
you just couldn't
and
reel
I,
it back in.
we couldn't breathe. We were laughing so hard we started crying and fell on the ground. It was so funny that he went to cast and gone. I mean, straight in his face. Gone.
It was like 30-mile-per-hour wind when we left that lake, and my whole bait cast was just filled with knots. And I didn't even think maybe I should just pitch this out and clear all these knots out. So literally, right when I let go, it just got caught up and snapped.
Oh, I hate that.
And the worst part was
at my truck,
it's
and
like,
I hear the. And whatnot, and then I hear Darren and Dalton kind of laugh. And next thing I know, I turn over. Darren's just on the ground.
He's on the ground. I'm sorry.
I couldn't breathe. I was literally crying, laughing so hard. It was
the worst part was I literally just tied that jig tied a new leader on, new jig on, was all ready for the next day. I wasn't going to do this stupid juvenile shit.
You thought you were above it all, didn't you? Wrong.
Yeah. No. So don't do. I'm never doing that again. No more long cast competition. Stupid.
Well, we're doing that at the first tournament of the year. We're going to have our first or last, I've decided. We're going to do competitions. We're going to do like accuracy flipping, and then we're going to do a long cast. See who can cast the longest. I think that'll be a whole lot of fun. Dustin, but one of the caveats to it is your line has to be attached to your reel and the bait. It cannot be detached. This is not a Bluetooth line tournament here. That's not how this works.
To end off.
Oh my God, this is depressing. I still have
we're looking
nightmares.
for a place to keep.
Yeah.
And the first place that I looked up, like it wasn't going to be closing until 7. We get there at 6:30, 6:40, and it's dark. And there's a sign on the door that says, "Sorry, we'll be closed at 1 or something like that." So I'm like, "All right, fine." So then we see a sign for this other place. I don't even remember what it was called. So we go over there, and at first we're like, where the hell is this place? Because there's just this big building with all the lights up, and then we're like, oh, no, it's over here. It's part of a golf course or whatever, So we all go in there, we get seated or whatever, and, didn't think a whole lot of it. We all order our different things or whatnot. They bring Dustin's out, which didn't look too bad.
Nice
Dalton's was actually... Yeah, it looked legit. Dalton's wasn't too bad because he had a Reuben.
Yeah.
And before I even got my food, so
All right, someone else has to tell the story. He's not going to be able to.
She goes to set down so she
basically-
sets Dustin's down, then sets Dalton's down, and we're both like, okay, that's not bad. Like mentally, we can tell everyone else, we're like, okay, that's not too bad. Then she sets mine down, and I got an 8-ounce sirloin with fries, and the sirloin was pathetic, to say the least.
It looked
Something
like a hockey
consistent with
puck.
what you would see. Something consistent with what you would see at, like, I don't know, a microwave TV dinner.
Oh,
Maybe a little worse.
It was worse.
Oh.
Yeah, it was way
bad.
worse.
It was
Not
bad.
that
He
big.
looked at me and Dalton, and we're just like, what?
We're holding it together too. Every one of us was like, okay, we'll live with it, because every one of us was thinking the same thing, like, what is that? And then Susie gets her food, and I go to grab the knife to cut my steak. I ate a fry or two, and the fries were really good. Props to them. The fries were awesome.
Props to that's an optimist. For
I
them.
go to
Paid for
grab the
steak,
knife
got
that
some hell of
was
good fries.
yeah. I go to grab my knife that was conveniently the steak was overlapped over my knife. So I'm like, okay, all you can see is the handle. You can't see the blade. I go to grab the knife and pull out about a 4-inch fillet knife to cut my steak.
That looked like it had been sharpened down to just the
Oh, really?
There was nothing left on that knife.
So me,
Bad.
Susie, and Dalton literally can't hold it anymore. We are crying, tears rolling down our face, crying, laughing so hard. And we look over at Dustin, and Dustin just chopped
No,
it away.
Oh, adventures of the road, man.
It's
He's just chopping away, and you can hear every once in a while he'd like start to laugh, and he'd stop himself, and we're crying. And I go to cut the steak, so I cut the steak into little quadrants, right? I'm like, okay, this can't be that bad. I go to chew it, and the second it touched my tongue, I don't know what face I was making, but whatever it was accurate to how that tasted. It was like
awful.
imagine a piece of chewy charcoal, and that's exactly what I was chewing on. And I make a face at Dalton and Susie. Dalton gets up and walks away. Susie can't hold it anymore. Susie's crying, laughing. Dalton's laughing at that point.
And the best part is Darren sends the picture in our group chat so Corey can see it. And this was Corey's response. What kind of idiot orders fries with a steak? it's like he didn't even notice the steak looked like shit. And we're like, what's he talking about? Fries and steak sounds great. What is the problem? He's like, no. Maybe like gravy or something, but not French fries. We're like,
mashed potatoes and gravy and corn. I was like, French fries are a staple.
Yeah, come on, man.
I don't know if you can overlap a video into the podcast, but I can send you the video if you want to try to overlap it in.
Absolutely, I can.
Oh,
Yeah, we can do that.
It's only
The video.
Yeah.
3 seconds is all it is, but it's
Yeah, we
great.
can do that. Yeah.
So my suggestion is if you go up to Hillman, Michigan, bring your own food. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a great bunch of
But the
restaurants.
thing is, we did bring our own food.
Yeah, we just didn't eat our own food.
But you get tired.
Oh,
You get tired of eating your own food after a while, and you want a good
I'm
meal. And
tired
you
of
see,
my
you
breakfast.
see a $21 steak, and you expect Texas Roadhouse, and then it wasn't.
That's the worst part is it was $21 too.
I'm sure those things.
Dang.
Susie's ribs weren't much better, but they were at least edible.
No, they were tough and just those. No,
You
It was
don't
like-
know
it was-
tough. You don't
Yeah,
It's
know
like
tough.
rib. It was
No,
just
I know,
with
but just-
the diameter of the ribs. It was like a circular. It almost looked like a tenderloin when they brought it out.
It looked
I
like a
don't even know where
burrito.
the bones were. In it.
It
I mean,
did.
was pretty bad.
it wasn't good.
Oh my god.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
we could
wasn't
almost do a
good.
whole episode on tips on eating on the run, eating on the road, and
I mean,
fishing.
we didn't expect to have to eat out because Darren and Dalton were going to catch us all these walleye.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not a walleye fisherman.
Yeah,
They
same.
never caught us one walleye, so what can you
I can
expect?
catch 20-inch largemouth,
that
but
one
I'll be
night.
damned to catch a walleye.
Yeah. Now, I heard a rumor that next year there may be some multi-species tournaments coming up for the to get involved with SIKC, right?
You guys are done.
If you
I
were going
haven't
to
heard
do
that rumor.
if you were going to do that, what would you pick? What multiple species would you go after other than the largemouth bass?
You got to throw crappie in there just because it's really good crappie fishing around here.
No,
Yes.
Flathead.
I know why
Don't
you
throw
said crappie
flathead.
because you have
Those are awful.
Flathead. Oh,
Flathead
No.
fishing.
the only
We
reason
don't
why
have a
you want
board.
crappie because you have live scope.
No, that means it's just a tool.
I'm
You wouldn't go
saying
dig
right
a hole
into your
without a
side.
shovel, would you?
if we're gonna do multi-species, it's got to be like channel cat or something. Fuck, excuse me.
Put bluegill in there. Bluegill in there.
I mean, crappie's no fun because there is a complete. If you talk about live scope being an advantage, that it won't
It's
even be
bad.
a competition. There's the 3 or 4 people with live scope. Will
Yeah,
win. But like
reckon.
channel cat or something that'd be pretty challenging actually.
I've caught some
but-
big channel cat with live scope.
Yeah, but that's more of luck. You think those are
It's
bass.
bycatch,
It's not like
yeah.
you think those are channel cat. I mean, catfish to me would be the most fun to do if you did a multi-species thing. Or I don't know. We don't really. Striper would be sweet if we did cedar in the fall and did striper.
Yeah.
Holy cow,
Yeah,
that would be a
neat.
blast.
What about
Right now,
bowfin?
we'd have to go to a really good bowfin place to
You'd
get
have-
high enough
yeah.
density. We'd have to do it in Missouri or something like at Duck Creek or
Or
something.
Emaquan. I mean, they still got bowfin in there.
Yeah, but bowfin, if they're not dense, they're pretty hard to catch. But you'll get them at Duck Creek all the time. I mean, they're super dense at Duck Creek.
I
And
got a
they're
spot or
big
two.
too. State record bowfins from Duck Creek, just right across the river. But
Nice.
you know,
So
but I haven't heard that. Yeah,
looking forward to next year and I don't know that's going to happen or not. Somebody just mentioned it. Looking forward to next year. So all of you finished really high in the standings in the SIK tournament trail this year. And I know that like Susy, you're going to be directing the tournament trail, right? KBL, Kayak Bass League. Hey, let's do a KBL commercial real quick. Anything you want to tell us about that tournament that's coming, tournament trail next year?
I mean, I've got a lot of cool things and cool ideas that I'm looking to do and incorporate. I'm actually hoping to sit down with Josh and talk about a couple of these ideas because I want to do something that involves, both KBL and SIKC.
Nice.
10 versus
So, I don't know.
10. I want to see the 10 versus 10, SIK versus KBL. That's all I want to see.
Right.
Now, traditionally,
But,
KBL fishes farther north in Illinois and what up into Wisconsin.
Yeah, so we do kind of like half and half Illinois, half Wisconsin, just to kind of change it up a little bit. They hadn't been traveling as far south as what they normally have. Usually the furthest they would go would be Newton. But after my experience this year, especially at Cedar, I'm like, all right, we got to start, hitting some different places.
Yeah.
Southern Illinois is where it's at.
Yeah. Some fisheries, man.
There's some good places. So, but yeah, I've got some ideas, still some things in the works, but,
Nice.
I definitely got a lot of inspiration from, how things were done at SIKC, kind of the unique awards and whatnot at the end of the season for different anglers and whatnot. So hoping to, sort of, sorry, there's a loud motorcycle outside. Hoping to, kind of bring back the club aspect of everything. Cause, honestly, KBL can be pretty cliquey, It happens, I'm hoping to not necessarily like get rid of it, but just bring it back to, a big group type of thing, because SIKC and KBL, it's like two different worlds, and sometimes that's just the way it goes, but
Sure.
I got some good visions and good goals for
That's exciting.
2025.
Yeah.
But I always give props to Ryan McCann when he originally came up with the SIK concept of calling it a club, because I've always thought we kind of worked more as a club. We're just a bunch of people out having fun and catching fish and seeing who's the best that day and hoping it's not Darren. I mean, it's
That's a common goal.
Hope it's not Darren again.
Yeah.
More often than not. So Dalton, you also have a great season this year. So anything that you want to concentrate on next year, do you think you can even better.
As long as Darren doesn't get top 3, you have a chance.
So nothing you can think of that has already hit your mind. You're like, next year I'm going to do this.
No, I'm just gonna stick to my same tactics and all that.
I'd say it works pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not. It takes every 2 years I'm gonna get first. That's what I'm kind of seeing right now. So I won't win first till about next 2 years.
The best second place angler I've ever met in my life. The best by far. So good. So good at second.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, talk about a roast. That hurts.
I got some green trophies to back my my heart, I guess.
I got
Yeah.
2.
He doesn't have so many.
Well,
I got 2.
then sometimes you get a wild card that comes in, like me, you know?
Susy has the same amount as Dalton, and Dalton's been in the league, or Dalton's fished way more SIK tournaments than her. So,
Yeah, Susy had a great year.
I did.
What do you
This
think-
was
I think
probably
what
the
you-
best year I've ever had.
I had the stats up a while ago. Where did you finish? I know it was in top 5. It was what, second or third, wasn't
she
I-
didn't get
third.
second.
3rd.
it? Third. Yeah, Darren, I think was second.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I was so glad Darren got 3rd in one tournament. Oh, I was so happy.
I was not happy about that.
That's pretty bad.
So
and
in
that's-
my mind, I know this is probably horrible to think about it this way, but in my mind, if I don't get first, I don't want to be in the top 3 because a 3rd place sticker is embarrassing on my kayak at this point.
Oh.
And it
So yeah, I
hurts
just brought
to
the
say
standings again. So we got Dalton, Darren, Susy, and then Corey, and then Jay Riedler was brought out your top 5 there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So awesome. And Dustin, you were right at 6, right?
Yeah, props to Jay's season. Holy cow, that guy tore it up at the end of the year. He finished that season with 2 second places. I remember sitting there after the Little Grassy tournament thinking, I got a good shot to get top 5. I think I got a good pathway. And then man, he closed the door in the end there. There was no catching him. I mean, I remember even going into Coffeen, I was like, okay, I'm worried about Larry and I'm worried about Jay. And I get back to the ramp and Larry didn't have his usual day. And I'm like, all right, well, I probably passed Larry up. And then somebody goes, oh yeah, but Jay got like 89 inches or something. I'm like, ah, shit. He tore it up. But
he's an amazing fisherman and doing it. Talking about with basic equipment too.
Man,
and he had
that guy
shoulder
puts
surgery.
Fish in the boat. Yeah, that guy puts fish in the boat.
Yeah.
So
that's incredible. Get some really good sticks in the club. There's no doubt about that.
And I sit here and I say to myself, we finished second at Crossroads with me, the 6th place angler. If Jay was there, man, maybe that popper was working out there. Maybe he ends up and putting up 90 inches there, and you guys could have won. So who knows?
So are we going to bring up that Dalton? So this is the first year in 3 years now that we've been to Crossroads. So Morris Reservoir, Reese got Angler of the Year that year. Reese finished top on our team at Crossroads. Year after that, Dustin, he got AOY. He was top of our team at Banner. Last year, we were at Cedar. I finished top of the team. I had AOY. We go up to Fletcher's. We're expecting a similar performance from Dalton, and I beat him by 9 inches. So I think we should strip his
81 inches
title.
on day one. 81 inches. That's pedestrian. I mean,
That is
as
terrible.
I've always said, if I'm the worst person on the team, we're going to win.
Don't take this abuse, Dalton.
81 inches?
Yeah, but he did order fries with a steak.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, I beat Darren the second day.
Do we need to talk about the 2-day total?
No.
So I essentially, on day 1 of practice, I had 90 and a quarter inches, I believe. On day 2 of practice, I had 91 and some change, 91 and a half. On day 3, first day of the tournament, I had 89 and a quarter. And then day 4 of me fishing there, on the last day, I had 90 inches flat. So I basically had 4 90-inch days in a row. I had just an incredible 4 days of fishing.
Amazing.
Some people just can't find big fish. Dalton.
That's true. Shit. If
Yeah.
Dalton would have got 90 inches on day 1, oh man.
Yeah, I had to wait on Tuesday.
We would have won by 6
We would've
inches if he
won.
would have put up 90 on day 1. Could you imagine?
It's not what you expect from your angler of the year, that's for sure.
Oh, the price of success, Dalton. You just need to take the angler of the year trophy and put it in front of the camera and leave it there.
Oh yeah, that's staying there.
Yeah.
Anytime you look at that Angler of the Year trophy, just think it was at Dustin's house and it was at my house already.
Hey,
It'll be back.
And we let our teams. We let our teams.
Yeah.
I blame Darren. He should have got more fish.
Yeah, you would blame me because
guys?
I did better than you. So yeah, I would blame me.
Like I was saying earlier, though, to be perfectly honest, we're giving Dalton a hard time, but I blame that it's funny when you're with 5 really good anglers, how conservatively we played it that first day was completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. And if we would have just let Dalton rip on day one and let Darren rip on day one, I think we would have had a better chance. But like I said, I'm pretty sure the other teams were doing the same thing. I think everyone else was pretty conservative day one too. So I don't know if it would have made a difference or not if everyone was doing that same thing. But I think that we definitely handcuffed ourselves by thinking we didn't, for how good of friends we are dicking around all the time, we really didn't kind of have a lot of faith that we were all going to get limits for some reason. I don't know why. Corey, like Darren and I are like, oh man, Corey's not going to get a limit. We're going to have to cross the lake and get some bigger fish to try to make up for him. But boom, he's got a limit, no problem. He ended up getting second place on our team the first day. And so Darren and I are sitting there not fishing for 3 hours waiting on Corey, and there was no reason to. He got a limit. It was second place on the team. Mm-hmm. So that's I think something that you learn going forward, and we tell the next crossroad teams if there's different people on there, man, have faith in your team out there, because we definitely were a little bit not where we should have been on that first day with our faith.
So we're not really used to a fishery like that. So that fishery restacked everywhere you went. Everything restacked all day long. You go to Cedar, you fish out a spot, you're not going to catch another fish in that spot all day long. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so our tournament last year on Cedar at Crossroads, I got away from my spots as soon as I had my limit because I didn't want to wear my spots out because I knew my fish weren't reloading like that. So then day 2, I went in there and had another amazing day. But at Fletcher's, we had that mindset going into it. And then on day 2, whenever we realized, we didn't have to do that, we basically shot ourselves in the foot day 1. But should have, could have,
you still led at the end of the day 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and like I said, you talk to those guys from the other teams, it seemed to be pretty similar to what they were mindsetting too. It's like, we don't know what's going to happen. We have to be pretty conservative. So I think we weren't the only ones that fell in that trap. But definitely looking back, it's one of those things like, God, I wish we would have just swung away on day 1. But
3 inches.
Shout out to the winning team, and they're listed as Lapeer. Do you guys know who that is or where they're from?
Lapeer County.
Lapeer County. Okay.
It sounds like they were kind of a new league, and they were a pretty small league. And it sounds like a lot of their guys were some pretty good sticks that agreed to fish for them, and they were really good. I mean, that's those guys lit it up. Like I said, they were doing something completely different than we were, and somehow I don't know how we didn't do it, but I wasn't there pre-fishing, so it's not my fault. But apparently,
it is your fault because you didn't pre-fish.
Yeah, raise your hand if you were pre-fishing.
But
it is your fault.
None of us ever went to the dam, and all the maps
Susy
say
did.
Susy did. All the
Susy
maps
did.
say that lake is 4 to 6 feet deep, the entire thing. And then we get back and we're talking to the Lapeer guys, and they're like, it says 4 to 6 feet deep, but it's really, well, let me say, well, it says it's 4 to 6 feet deep, but it's really 10 feet deep by the dam, And you're like, oh shit, that might have been different.
They're like, we were basically just in the middle of the lake, bomb casting a chatterbait as far as we could and just cranking. That was it.
Yep.
It's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, known as the guy that catches fish on chatterbait, and I didn't freaking catch hardly anything.
Too.
And I don't know if you've ever tried to fish 400 yards in the middle of a lake at a railroad bed, but you catch that, you cast on that little tiny 6-foot swath and you catch a fish, and the wind's blowing 20 miles per hour, so you measure your fish. And then you got to try to find the railroad bed again because you've blown 30 feet off of it. and it was so technical and terrible. And then you find out, oh man, these guys are just bomb casts and chatterbaits into nowhere. And it's like, I wish we were doing that.
I wonder what would happen, because we're chatterbait fishermen. We all know that.
Well, not me, but anyways.
Hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yeah. But like you say, you learn something different every year, and I feel like I would love to fish that lake again in the tournament. I think it would be fun. It's super fun. But those guys were all surprised that we were fishing jigs on the railroad track in places. No one else was doing that.
That's
every single team.
Yeah, so we completely found our own pattern that was completely different than anybody else was fishing.
Who is we you're talking about?
Oh, sorry. When I got to the lake day one, I had not fished it. I had just got in at 7:45 p.m. the night before, driving into 40 mile per hour headwinds from the hurricane. And I walk in the door, and Darren goes, "You're going to be my bitch tomorrow, and I'm just going to follow. I'm going to take you around the lake."
Exactly what I told him.
I'm like, sure.
And then we get to the spot, and I told him, I said, "Okay, make long casts. It's a super clear water. You're not going to catch anything right next to the boat." And he goes, "Oh, there's a fish right here."
Darren.
And he flips 10 feet away and catches a 16-inch smallmouth. I was like, "What'd you say?"
Well, I was sitting right there. Why would I not catch that?
That's awesome. All right, so we're running a little over an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time, and I know that while we give Dalton a a lot of rubbing here, we're all real proud of your accomplishment this year. You should be extremely proud. I know you worked your tail end off for it,
thank you.
Especially still from Darren, because he was constantly nipping at your tails. I think Susy too was really close at a couple of points during the year.
Better cheers, it'll be mine next year.
I will say, I remember after that 2022 season, I always like to make my predictions, and I said 2023, that Dalton guy is going to win Angler of the Year, because that guy catches fish, and he's moving to a pedal kayak. He's going to win easy. But I did not expect that Darren was going to somehow hit this trigger spot where all of a sudden every fish he catches is 20 inches. But I will say,
I went 6 or 7 of the 8.
Yeah, I will say that I'm actually surprised it took one more year. Dalton's been hammering fish for 2-3 years now. That it was going to happen eventually. So glad it happened earlier than later.
Yeah.
Outstanding. All right. Well, hey, I want to thank all of you for coming on tonight and helping me do a bit of a roast here of our Angler of the Year. And don't you look forward to being in the same spot next year, Dalton?
Oh yeah, I am. I'm ready to be here. Exact same spot with that trophy still there.
Outstanding.
I don't know, man.
That's what you guys say.
We got.
That's what you guys.
I think we got some challenges already. Then.
I got to try to figure out how to get over 85 inches, but it's coming.
Susie's a traitor. She's going to KBL. She won't win it.
Yeah.
You better watch what you say. She might still sneak down.
Tournament fishing, because I don't have to worry about judging and running stuff.
Yeah.
I do my best.
Susie, you got to come down and steal a couple tournaments from Darren for us.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Whoop them up. All right.
I already did that this year, so
why not?
Fair enough.
I'll do it again.
I beat you in AOI though.
Yeah, got more inches than you.
I'm going to end this before we end up with another brawl here. Everybody have a good night.